We are continuing in our series, and I apologize, we're not going to have the sermon notes on the screen. We're having some computer issues, so we won't have those. I'll just try and be very distinct about what scriptures we use and what scriptures we share this morning. But we are on the second week of our series looking at the three gifts the Magi, the wise men, brought. And last week we talked about frankincense and how it related to Jesus being the high priest. This week we're going to look at another one of those gifts. And we find in Matthew chapter 2, verse 11, it says what gifts they brought. And it says there in Matthew 2:11, and going into the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother, and they fell down and worshipped him. Then opening their treasures, they offered him gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. This week, we're going to be looking at gold, or at myrrh. We're going to be looking at myrrh. And you know, I heard this fable, I heard this story that actually had 4 gifts, but the 4th gift was rejected. Somebody had decided to bring fruitcake along with the gold, frankincense, and myrrh, but that was quickly rejected. They were sent on their way. But so that we only have recorded gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And this week, again, we're going to be looking at myrrh. And just as last week we asked the question, what is frankincense? We're going to ask the question today, what is myrrh? Myrrh is, and I had to look it up because I wasn't quite exactly sure. And what I found was this. It's a sap that exudes from a tree found in Arabia and India. And it consists of a mixture of resin, gum, and the oral myrrh, which produces its characteristic color. You can get it in solid and liquid form, and it's used as an incense, and it's also used specifically for embalming. In John chapter 19, verse 39, we read about Nicodemus, who took Jesus' body to prepare him to be put in the tomb. And it says in John 19:39, Nicodemus also, who earlier had come to Jesus by night, came bringing a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 75 pounds in weight. The myrrh is said to represent Jesus' suffering, the sacrifice that he made dying for us, because it signifies death, and that Jesus gave his all for us. In Mark chapter 9, verses 33 through 35, there's a story about the apostles and some things they said, and Jesus corrected them. In Mark chapter 9, verses 33 through 35, it says this, and they came to Capernaum, and when he was in the house, he asked them, what were you discussing on the way? But they kept silent, for on the way they had argued with one another about who was the greatest. And he sat down and called the 12, and he said to them, if anyone will be first, he must be last of all and servant of all. That was Mark 9, 33 through 35. Jesus talked about being a servant, talking about being one who sacrificed, and Jesus lived that. Jesus was willing to put himself over others. He gave his all for us. And that leads to my first point this morning, that Jesus is our sacrificing and suffering servant. You know, we see a great example of this in prophecy. Around 700 years earlier, it's written in the book of Isaiah, a prophecy about Jesus. Listen to what it says. Isaiah chapter 53, we're going to read verses 3 through 5. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And as one from whom men hide their faces, he was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions, He was crushed for our iniquities, and upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace. And with his wounds, we are healed. This is a passage we would read at Easter time, not Christmas time. But this has so much meaning for now. I want you to think back, listening to Easter sermons or reading over the scriptures describing the Passion Week, the week that leading up to Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection. That alone, what Jesus suffered for us, that he was willing to put others, everybody else, over him. Think about it. He was mocked, beaten. He was made fun of. He was mocked. He was laughed at. And that's just the early trials. When he was finally, when they claimed him to be guilty, they beat him to an inch of his life. They took a cat of nine tails. And a cat of nine tails, if you don't know what it is made up of pieces of glass, of shards, different things. So when it hits you, it cuts you open. It breaks you. They shoved a crown of thorns on his head. Shoved a crown of thorns on his head. They made him carry a cross to Calvary. And he carried it as far as he humanly could, until he couldn't carry it anymore, because they had broken his body. That's sacrifice. That's suffering. He did this for us. He gave us his all. I can't imagine that pain. Every time I watch a movie like The Passion of Christ, I just have tears flow. Because I know even that is nowhere close to what Jesus went through. And that is hard to watch. That movie is difficult to watch. And Jesus being on the cross, nailed to the cross. And do you know how you die when you die hanging on a cross? Your death is asphyxiation. You have to hold yourself up to breathe. And he's holding himself up with where he's nailed, until he can't stand the pain anymore. And then they release. And then they're in a position where they can't breathe. And when that gets unbearable, they pull up. And then they release. That's why some people, it takes days for them to die. And it's just agony. It's where the word excruciating comes from dying on a cross. This is the one who suffered for us. He put others first for us. In Luke chapter 9, verses 22 and 23, it says, "The Son of Man must suffer many things, and be rejected by the elders, chief priests, and teachers of the law. And he must be killed, and on the third day be raised to life." Then he said to them all, "If anyone would come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me." Please never take his death lightly. Don't forget his death. And I know this is a time we celebrate his birth. But why did he come? Why did Jesus come? He sacrificed his life. He gave his last breath so we could be with him one day. And that's one of the prophecies out of Isaiah 53. What I read there, Isaiah 53, 3 through 5. But now I want to read something else that's interesting. I want to read the next verse in Isaiah 53. Because it really talks about the people of the world. Here's verse 6 of Isaiah 53. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned every one to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. That sounds familiar. Everyone turned everyone to his own way. I think our last series just talked about that. Everybody who seemed to do right in their own eyes. We as humans don't learn. We continue to sin, and we continue to try and do other ways except for following God like we should. And it's a very interesting description of what we are, of who we are. It's written here. My second point. We are sheep. We are sheep. Now some may wonder, why are we called sheep? Well, there's a couple of reasons. When you look at what a sheep actually is, their characteristics, we can see why. First thing is, they have almost no defensive system. On their own, they have almost no defensive system. Their best defense is running. It's trying to get away. Or huddle up in a group. That's it. That is their defense. Sheep are said to be prey animals. And then I think of the words in Matthew chapter 9, verse 36, which says, when he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. They have a horrible defense. They also, when they are focused, it's ridiculous what they do. When sheep are focused, they will follow whoever or whatever's in front of them, no matter what. Let me give you an example. I read this article. It's out of the BBC, British Broadcasting Company, and they reported a story from Turkey from back in 2005. There was an incident where shepherds watched 1,500 sheep fall off a cliff, one following the other, following the other. The first 400 died. And then after that, they broke the fall the next 1,100. When sheep are focused, they follow no matter what. And like sheep, we can be extremely gullible or attracted to somebody who's teaching wrong things, or attracted to an idea that goes against God, and we get stuck on that, and we follow that, and we put that over God. Or we get stuck on what the popular culture thing is, whatever the norm is. Well, you don't want to be different, so we got to agree or fall right in line. People become sheep, willing to be led whatever direction. This herd mentality happened against Moses. It happened against Paul and Barnabas. It happened to Jesus. You know, I referred to the Passion Week. Remember what happened on Palm Sunday? He come in and all the people are shouting what? Hosanna, which means God save us. The God who saves. Hosanna, Hosanna in the highest. By the end of the week, what are they saying? Crucify him. We want Barnabas. Free Barnabas. Crucify him. Or Barabbas. What happened with Barnabas? Free Barabbas. sheep will follow. When they're focused, they're stuck in whatever they're following and don't see the right way. But there's also something wrong with sheep. Those times when they aren't focused, they are prone to wander. They are prone to move away from the flock when they lose their focus. Apparently, they lose their focus a lot. A sheep's only chance of survival is to stay with the flock. They go on their own, they're done for. That's why they're shepherds, to keep them together, to keep them safe. But the sheep, they'll go someplace else, they'll wander. And so we cannot act like sheep. Remember Peter's words, 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8. Be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Sheep don't go away from your shepherd. Don't go away from the flock. This is why we need a shepherd. And we have a great shepherd. My third point this morning. The servant we need, the shepherd. We talk about Jesus being that servant. He is the greatest servant we could ever have. He's our shepherd. A shepherd's primary responsibility is to take care of the flock, the safety and the welfare of the flock. He gives everything he has to defend them, to make sure they're safe, to fight off any animal that comes in to try and take the sheep. He will sacrifice. He will do everything he can. Sheep need their shepherd. And again, I read Matthew 9:36, what I read earlier, in describing how lost we are. Now think about it, about who we need as sheep to help us. Again, Matthew 9:36. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. We need a shepherd. We need Jesus to lead us. Shepherds are there for their sheep. I think of a parable Jesus told in Luke 15. I'm going to read part of it here. Luke 15, verses 4 and 5. What man of you, having 100 sheep, if he has lost one of them, does not leave the 99 in the open country and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? And when he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders, rejoicing. A shepherd is a servant for the sheep, but he's a servant leader. Jesus leads us, but he does everything he can to take care of us as well. We need our shepherd. I think of the words from John chapter 10. John chapter 10, if you want to turn over there, that's a little longer passage I'm going to read. John chapter 10, verses 10 through 18. John 10, 10 through 18. Listen to what it says here. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. He who is a hired hand and not a shepherd, who does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I own my own, and my own know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. And I have other sheep that are not of this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock, one shepherd. For this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life that I may take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down, and I have authority to take it up again. This charge I have received from my Father. You look at how Jesus describes a shepherd here. A shepherd, his job was severe. It was hazardous. It was tiring. A shepherd's job requires commitment. A shepherd's job is to not run away when danger comes. He will always be there. And for a shepherd, he puts the interests of the sheep over his life. Jesus is our great shepherd. I love the words in 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verse 3. 2 Thessalonians 3:3. But the Lord is faithful. He will establish you and guard you against the evil one. He takes care of his flock, even to the point of sacrificing his life. He is willing to die for his sheep. Now let me go back to Isaiah 53. Verses 11 and 12 say this. Out of the anguish of his soul he shall see and be satisfied. By his knowledge shall be the righteous one, my servant. Make many to be accounted righteous, and he shall bear their iniquities. Therefore I will divide him a portion with the many, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he poured out his soul to death, and was numbered with the transgressors. Yet he bore the sin of many, and makes intercession for the transgressors. Jesus gave us himself. He was that perfect sacrifice, as we talked about last week. He gave us all for us. And then when you think about Christmas, Jesus' birth, it's easy just to stop and think about the angels appearing to the shepherds. It's easy just to stop and think about the wise men showing up shortly after and visiting and giving the gifts. It's easy to think about that. But remember what began. He came to this earth, and every day he was tempted to sin, just like us. But he did not give in to that sin. He lived a perfect life here, which is what qualified him to be our sacrifice. Because he was without blemish, he was without shame, he was without fault. But he endured that every day. And not just during the easier times. You know, there are times when things are easy and we can withstand things, and then there are some bad days. We have those bad days, or difficult days, or hard days. I think it was a hard day for Jesus when Satan came to tempt him. Remember, he had just fasted for 30 days. It wasn't the easiest time for him, but he endured. Every day, people were mocking him, making fun of him, ridiculing him. You claim to be the Messiah? Aren't you just that carpenter's son? How dare you say you're the Messiah? Who do you think you are? And as Jesus told them, I am. Jesus suffered and sacrificed for us from day one. Not just when he went on trial. He suffered for us from day one. Don't forget that. And the wise men shared that gift of myrrh, symbolizing knew Jesus would be sacrificing himself for us. It's so easy to just do what we want, go our own way, just to take good things and not the difficult things. It's so easy to be like sheep. Let Jesus be your shepherd. Let Jesus be your shepherd. Let him be in control of your life. And I guarantee you, it will be a lot better. I guarantee it will be better. We're going to offer a time of invitation. We're going to sing a song this morning. Oh, come to the altar. Oh, come to the altar. This morning, if you do not know Jesus, now is a great time to make him Lord. Why is it a great time? Because it's today. We're not guaranteed tomorrow. We're not guaranteed next week. We're not guaranteed we'll be here Christmas Day. But what we have is right now. And if you don't know Jesus, come forward and give your life to him today. Confess him as Lord. Start following his direction, his way, by repenting, being baptized and burying that old life and starting a new life. Following him. Following your shepherd. You can do that today. We're going to sing. So won't you stand and sing with us?